800-951-0592, the silver extravaganza on this Wednesday. Cases of U.S. Silver Eagles, $19,500. These are sealed cases. Again, you can't touch that price anywhere. Thousands of dollars less than the big online guys. Rolls of Silver Eagle, $785. The average, that's like $100 less than the bigger online guys. And then rolls a $50 at $250 to the roll at 800-951-0592. What was it? Was it yesterday or the other day we told you China launched its first major airline, to compete with the, Boeing and Airbus, I think they called it the C919, not to be outdone, yesterday. China, apparently not done. They launched their first cruise ship ever. The country's first ship, called the Adora Magic City, left the docks of Shanghai about 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday, according to the Chinese media. The ship took 4 years to build. The report says the ship is the world's most complex single electronic product made, with over 25 million individual parts, 5 times the number of individual parts in it used in its first domestic aircraft, which they launched last week. The ship sports 2,125 guest rooms, can accommodate over 5,000 passengers, is set to be delivered at the end of this year. It has taken its first 6-day float, then they got 2 other tests. Then it will be delivered. China now joins Germany, France, Italy, and Finland as the only countries with the ability to build large cruise ships. And again, it just is what it represents. Now, guess who's not, what country wasn't on the list? Right. We aren't on there. We can't do it. We could, but obviously everyone's like, God, it's way too expensive to do it in America, and we've gotten rid of that capability. But again, Jason, it's just another example of the rise.
Yeah, and what's interesting, Joe, is that I brought this up a few times. I'm not so sure China is economically as stable and strong as some people think. I just have this vision in the future of China also having economic problems massively, and America and China just taking themselves down together. I really believe another economy is going to be rising up, and there's a couple of countries out there that are growing versus kind of going sideways or going down, like America and China. And China obviously has all the manufacturing, so they've taken over all of that. We're not building cruise ships; they are, but they got to put people on the cruise ship. Got to make the cruise ship worthwhile, right? If they start building these things, they got to make it economically viable. And that's where I'm wondering. I'm wondering, Joe, how many Chinese people or where else they're taking the ship to get people on there. Are they going to use the ship? And like you said, in America, we don't build them anymore. It's too expensive. Well, it's because economically we're on the downtrend. So we'll see. China passing up the U.S., I think that could still happen. But are both countries going to be going down at the same time when China passes us, right, Joe? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, yeah, and again, nobody's saying China. Of course China's going to have ups, and that's how the world works. No central bank can fix that. We tried to, right? Remember the peak. It was Alan Greenspan, Bill Clinton was president. That was the height of central banking, right? We found nirvana. See, we told you we could do this, right? Thankfully, you guys put us in charge in 1913. Look at what we've done. Remember, we're going to pay off the debt by 2010. And don't worry about the baby boomers, because all the money we're going to save on the interest on the debt, we'll have plenty of money Well, what's happened since then? The whole thing's fallen apart. Think about today. Fast forward now. Now it's 2023. The interest on the debt is about to become the second biggest payment. And by 2025, it will be the biggest expense of the federal government. And look at where we are in currency-wise, inflation-wise. Central banks don't work, period. And again, to Jason's point, listen, China's got trouble. Listen, China's housing market is a disaster. It's a disaster, right? And they're doing what we're doing, right? They cover it up. Eventually, people are going to clamor for sound money because what's coming next, it's a great wipeout. And it's not just a wipeout here. It's a wipeout everywhere. When we're talking about wiping out fiat currencies globally, this is what we're talking about. And one of the reasons why Catherine Austin Fitts says, hey, maybe we could look at gold, because look at how many nations actually own gold. There's only a couple, and they're just pig-headed and stubborn, right? And who knows? Listen, tomorrow, next week, next month, England can start buying gold. We don't know. And I use them because they're probably the easiest whipping boy, right? Because they sold all their gold leading up to 2000. And what a horrible, you know what? And again, I go back to Alan Greenspan, right? They believed their own hype. And really all that happened was when they created that new Social Security number. That allowed the government to collect trillions of dollars every year. You got to remember, $1 trillion in like 1984 that's a huge amount of money. Today, it's not that big, right? In our minds, it's not that big. That was an incredible amount of money, and they got to use that money every year for a couple of days. They just hid it. It didn't actually exist. We grew way beyond our means. And now, of course, Jason, we got to pay for it all now. Because guess what? We didn't pay the debt off. We didn't do it. So now, all of a sudden, the money's just not there.
You can't pay off the debt in a debt money system. If there is no debt, there is no money. Every dollar of debt is a dollar that's circulating around somewhere in the system. So you can't, that's the funny thing about the 1990s and talking about paying off the debt. Well, what are you going to use for money? There's going to be no money if there is no debt. Right, Joe? It's a backwards system. That's the Fed created this, right? We're not supposed to pay off the debt. We're supposed to grow the debt. That's how you grow the economy, Joe. Grow the debt.
When we get back, Janet Yellen talking more bank failures. And more commercial real estate just went jingle mail. We'll be back after the break. (800-951-0592). Janet Yellen can't help herself. She was out on CNBC, the Treasury Secretary this morning, saying there is motivation to see some consolidation in the banking industry. And it wouldn't surprise me to see some of that going forward. See, we're motivated to have less banks. According to her interview this morning, Yellen said she wouldn't want to see the diverse banking system. Listen, the banking system is not diverse. That's a lie. It's a lie. What do they hold? Treasuries? Mortgage-backed securities? Some credit card debt? Right? Maybe some student loan debt, private student loan debt. That's it. That's not diverse. But, again, she wouldn't want to see the diverse banking system threatened by further consolidation. But it will be understandable given the pressure on the earnings some banks are experiencing. She says that she expects there will be issues in the commercial real estate sector giving the changing approach to work. See, it wasn't the central bank's fault, and it wasn't the Treasury's fault. No. No, I guess, Jason, we could use it. It's COVID's fault, right? Because everybody worked from home. That's whose fault it is. We've seen such a big change in attitudes and behaviors towards remote work. Well, if that's true, right, now I know they make it out to be true, and for some places do it, but by and large, most people got to go to work here. I don't know, I'm on the freeway. It's pretty crowded. L.A. traffic hasn't gotten better, but okay. Are the banks doing anything about it? What the banks didn't see that happening? They haven't prepared for it? Especially in the environment of higher interest rates. Oh, there it is. See, as I've educated all of you, they don't pay these buildings. See, we buy a house or a car, right, our big expenses. The goal is to pay it off, right? Now, of course, now they've changed that now, haven't they? Used to have mortgage burning parties. Remember, people, hey, when a couple paid off their mortgages in the 70s and into the 80s, they throw a big party. They don't have no parties anymore. Why? Because they want you to refi it. Don't pay it off. Refi it, right? Yeah, refi it. Right? Constantly, that's what they don't pay. They pay interest only on all this commercial real estate, all of it. To Jason's point, right? The whole thing is built on more debt. And it works wonderfully as long as the property appreciates in value. Hey, we bought it.
Yeah, GDP
right?
has to go up.
Right? We bought it for $500 million. We made interest payments for 5 years. It's time to refinance. Well, here's the good news. Interest rates are still zero, and now the office building is worth $700 million. So guess what we did? We borrowed the $700 million, and we paid the interest for only 5 years. All of a sudden, it's time to refinance. Uh-oh. Now there's 2 problems, not 1, 2. Well, depending on the office building, how old it is, the location of it, it could be worth 10% less, or it could be worth 80% less. Now, that's a problem. But there's another problem. Interest rates aren't zero. Right? So it's a double problem. And Janet Yellen knows all too well about it and expects there to be issues. Really what she wanted to say, big issues. We've seen a big change in attitude. Well, that would mean big issues, right, Jason? If there's a big change in attitudes, and she says that she thinks broadly the banks are preparing for some restructuring and difficult goings ahead. My overall read is the level of capital and liquidity in the banking system is strong. She says that every time. Apparently, we know that's not true, right? She says that, but we know that's not true. There is going to be pain, and the banks need to be able to handle the strain. So there you have it from the Treasury Secretary, and again, the most dangerous woman alive, in my opinion. By the way, she also said the passing of the debt ceiling. What a great thing for America.
More spending. Joe, there's one thing she said that I think easily missed because she's talking about something else. But her verbiage maybe kind of spells out something that we can see that the Fed's thinking, even though she's the Treasury Secretary. How long would you define the word era? Is that something I think that's like 4 or 5 years or more, 20 years, 10 years, an era, right? She said the era of higher interest rates. We've only been doing it for a year and a half. Did she accidentally slip something about, hey, we're not going down. We're not lowering interest rates. Maybe not raising them, but we're not lowering them. We're in the era.
She is a very, very smart woman. And what I mean by that is she picks her words carefully. I'm not that smart. Right? I'm reckless with my words sometimes, because and again, not that I'm trying to overemphasize things, but I'm not that way. She is, right? So she used the word era for a reason, right? She could have just simply said we're in a high interest rate environment. No. She said we're in a high interest rate era. Yeah. Which means what? Hey, rates are going to be higher for years. In other words, what she's saying is this commercial real estate problem, years. Patriot Radio News Hour, final segment coming up. $800-951-0592, the Silver Extravaganza. Cases of U.S. Silver Eagles, $19,500. You're saving thousands of dollars from our competition. Rolls of Silver Eagles, $785. That's about $100 a roll less than most of the competition out there. And then, of course, the silver half dollars at $250 a roll at 800-951-0592. Jason, San Francisco. Park Hotels and the Hilton San Francisco Union Square and Park 55, the first, the largest, and the fourth largest hotels in San Francisco, have stopped making their mortgage payments. Park Hotels said Monday it stopped making payments on the $725 million loan due in November, handing the keys back over to its creditors, and says that the ultimate removal of the hotel from its portfolio. Hilton, the 1,920-room Hilton, the largest hotel in San Francisco, announced that they also are no longer going to be making their mortgage payments and will be handing the keys over to their creditors. And Jason, this is a growing trend. And you know what's interesting, Janet Yellen? Sorry, but these were hotels. This wasn't people staying home from work. Oh, I work from home now. No, these were hotels. Now, granted, you can say, well, it's San Francisco, it's an armpit. Jason, we know how these things work, and we just laid it out for you. I don't care where it is. I don't. San Francisco, L.A., Chicago, New York, Boston, Houston, Dallas, Phoenix, Denver. They pay the interest. And then 5 years later, they want to refinance. Even if the hotel, let's just give it a benefit of the doubt. Let's just say, hey, guess what? You owed $720 million, and it's still worth $720 million, okay? Which, that's not the case most times. But here's the problem. You know how you got that interest payment? It was at 3%. Yeah, well, yeah, it's now 7%. And probably on commercial real estate, maybe 8%, right? If the Fed raises again, who knows? And all of a sudden, they're like, wait a minute. That's going to double my payment. Yeah, here's the keys back. No thanks. I'm not interested, Jason.
If all hotels close tomorrow, and it's been a while since I've seen this number, but I think it's like 5% of the population is staying in hotels at any one time, your temporary and homeless population would grow by millions, right? So you can't say that that's not housing. It's just a different type of housing, Joe. So when the biggest hotel in San Francisco is closing down, you know, and one thing that bothers me, Joe, is what happens to the credit ratings on these companies that just walk out on their loans? You know, why do we have the feeling the Hilton's not going to get slapped with any penalties for doing this? Because they're big enough that they can walk.
I promise you, this will be looked at positively. Oh my gosh! Hey, you're going to save hundreds of millions of dollars by not making that payment. Good for you, right? Because that property wasn't worth it anyway.
Borrow some money over here. We'll put it in another state where they're going to actually fill the hotel up.
Right. We'll put it in Phoenix or Denver, right? 800-951-0592. Joe and Jason, we're coming right back with the half-empty cup. Don't touch that dial.